Hi, I'm Stephen with AlbertaUrbanGarden.ca. Welcome to my garden. So in today's episode we're going to talk about building garden soil. This is by far the most important part of your garden, in my opinion, to spend money on. Now I do advocate low cost gardening, but for this, if you're starting fresh and you don't have a lot, spend the money, do it right. What I did when I originally built this garden is I just took the soil that I used to put my lawn in and I tossed it in here. Didn't even think about it. I figured at the time I wasn't an avid gardener. I figured at the time soil is soil, it'll grow, right? Well, it did grow, but it had a couple of problems. It compacted very quickly. It was very, very finely sifted soil. It compacted very quickly. And because it was originally on this land, which was farmland at one point, it was stripped off for this residential development. What they did is they stockpiled it, and they're required to, by law, preserve that, so they stockpiled it on site. Stockpiling it on site for multiple years, what that leads to is weeds. Typically, the outside gets covered in things like chickweed or whatever your local invasive species is. But what really happens is it drops lots of seeds. Now those seeds may not germinate right away, but they go into what's called the seed bank. Now most soils, active soils, will have a seed bank. Those are the latent seeds that are sitting in there that are just waiting for the right conditions to pop. So I bought it, they sieved it, I put it in here, and you know what happened? Almost immediately chickweed showed up. Now chickweed is it's a stubborn, annoying little weed. You can pull the top off, but to pull the root system out, you'll never get it. So you're just always battling. Always, always, always. Yes, it was cheap. Yes, it was fast to do, but the hours I spent in here fighting those weeds drove me insane. And I mean, I nearly gave up gardening. And you see how much I really enjoy gardening. I nearly gave it up my first year because I just couldn't win. You know, I did some sheet mulch experiments, and yes, that worked, but that was a lot of work, and I wasn't getting water through, and you know, I was fighting and fighting. So this year, you know what I decided to do? I decided to start fresh. So my strawberry bed last spring, I got rid of all the soil in there. I replaced it with good soil for strawberries, and it's doing very well. Last fall, I got rid of the soil in here and did a trench composting video on it. This is doing very, very well. This spring, I got rid of this. And I do have to thank my father. He did all of the tough work. As I was building the trellis that you've seen in a previous episode, my father was hauling this frozen soil. At the time, we hit the frost in there. It was a big chunk of ice, but I've finished off cleaning it out. And today we're gonna go through, we're gonna do some trench composting. We're going to talk about if you don't have organic material, you don't have good soil building material, what you can buy to start with, and then we're going to cap it off with a good spring mulching and how you can make a good spring mulch. And as with everything, you'll see updates throughout the season. Eventually we're going to turn this bed into our little hoop house and our brassica bed so that we can see if we can garden into fall and start earlier and earlier into the spring. But the key to that, the key to season extending, is the soil. Starting with good soil. Building a community in here of beneficial microbes and organisms that will help us move this forward and get production year after year after year, and you basically don't have to do anything but continue to add new mulch and plant your garden plants in here so that you can bring in a good community. Now, some of the benefits of trench composting specifically is your household scraps. You can get rid of a lot of household scraps in a trench compost. That's everything but basically meat and cheese. You can get rid in here. Whole, partially decomposed, doesn't matter. What you'll do is you'll put that in here, and we'll show that to you in a second, and it'll be awesome. That'll also bring in worms and beneficial microbes and trace minerals. So the scraps that you're putting in there from your kitchen have all that in there, and that's bringing it into your garden soil. So those worms will come in here and they will go wild. I just let my native ones come in here and they go crazy. Last year I did a winter compost and I grew some squash on it, and when I was removing that in the spring, putting it in the trench compost, it was just full of worms. It was awesome. I was so excited. Some of the drawbacks though is it's volunteers, right? You're gonna end up, because that compost hasn't gotten very hot, you might end up with some volunteers, but I'm gonna show you a couple of tricks to deal with that. And that's it. So without further ado, let's get going. We've got some good hard work to get through today. And I'll show you how I'm gonna rebuild this soil so that it becomes a productive garden soil as opposed to a lawn soil. So you remember this compost that I made a couple of weeks ago? And how I told you it was gonna wait till fall until we'd get into this pile? Well, you know, plans changed. So we're actually gonna use this. This is partially decomposed material. So just a recap, and I'll put a link to the video. We used coffee grounds, residential waste from, or residential food scraps from the house, and wood compost, and leaf and grass compost in here as well. So it's partially broken down, but that's not a problem. It might become a problem for some of the bigger, deeper rooting vegetables and stuff, because there might be a nutrient drawdown, and what causes that nutrient drawdown is actually the energy and the materials required to break that organic material down is taken away from being plant available, which is okay. If we have a little bit of a yield problem, it is well worth it in the long run to have this material in here than it is to leave it out. And the reason is once that material is broken down, then that becomes available to the plant. And specifically with larger things like sticks and stuff, that will take longer to break down. But much like in a hugelkultur, it'll break down and it'll provide long-term nutrients to many, many, many generations of crops that come after it. So we're gonna start hauling. Now what you'll need to do is, I'm gonna recommend a pitchfork or a garden fork. I'm not quite sure which one I have. You can correct me if, I don't think this is a pitchfork. I think this is a garden fork with the thicker tines. But what this will do is this will aerate the material as we bring it into that bed, which will allow it to go through another heating cycle to again see if we can't take care of some of those weed species, help everything break down, and then prepare it to kind of settle in as the base layer on this lasagna of a garden soil that we're making. So without further ado, let's get some hauling done. This is going to take a while, so I'll show you one or two after. I might need a little break so that I can actually continue to speak to you. But this is a great workout as well. You want to work out in your garden? You don't want to have to go to the gym? Haul soil. So we have some paper products here. This is from my apple tree. And this is awesome for lining things, for breaking down. But today, we just don't want to put it to waste. This is a paper product. So we're going to use it on the bottom of our bed because this will take longer to break down than, say, a newspaper or a cardboard. So we don't want it to impede the roots of our brassicas we're going to put in here. Same thing with paper bags. I got these from Starbucks. They were kind enough to provide coffee grounds, and they continue to have that program. So what we're going to do is we're just going to place these out evenly and start hauling that compost. So you'll see varying degrees of breakdown here in our compost. We got sticks, we got everything. So this is, on the long term, going to be just a beautiful, beautiful way to bring worms in and beneficial microbes and provide long-term nutrition to many crops in the future. So if you can, a rule of thumb is the bigger bits you want to put right at the bottom. You know, things like wood and stuff, just to kind of help with not causing a massive nutrient drawdown that causes issues in the future. So we're just going to finish leveling this off. And one thing we're going to do is we're actually going to slope it from the back here to the front here. Now the reason that is my beds face southeast, and if we do that, then we're effectively going to get a little bit more direct sun on there. And that little bit more direct sun, especially for our winter crops and heat retention, will end up yielding quite a good result and effectively move the garden a little bit further south without actually having to move a little further south. So we're just gonna finish this up and get on to the next layer. So we got the compost all graded nicely. It's time to water it in. Now the key to this method is spring, summer, fall. It needs to stay moist. If it dries out, you're going to lose a lot of the added benefits, and the decomposition won't happen the way you want it to maximize the use of this area. So without spending a single penny, we filled up most of this bed with our compost, which is amazing. I am absolutely pleased with the fact that this hasn't cost us anything yet. So it's time to sheet mulch. Now I've kept this box for exactly this project. Ooh, I'm hitting the camera. And the reason is, it's large, makes it a lot easier to do this, and cut it quickly. And when I go to plant, because it'll be fairly close to the surface, the spade or the garden shovel that I use will go right through this without moving any of it. It'll just cut a hole because it's one continuous unit. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that's nice and flat on there and it covers the entire area. And on the corners we can use newspaper and stuff, but for the most part this should cover most of the bed. Oops. So just brought a little bit more cardboard. Now you can use newspaper, you can use pretty much anything organic. You just want to stick away from glossy papers and stuff like that. And you can just lay that flat across. Now the worms will come up and break this down, but it should impede any weed seeds that we have or any volunteers from kind of sprouting up right away. Now that's not to say it's going to be perfect, but it should definitely help with keeping that down. And if you're wondering, yes, it might impact our seedlings a little bit because they can't get straight down, and that should be okay for now. So you'll notice that I've raised this bed. I had enough compost to fill the original bed, but I need soil for this year. So I raised it, and I raised it by 6 inches. I'm not going to fill it all the way. This will settle over time. The compost will break down and settle, and the soil I put on top will settle as well. But what this will allow me to do is in the fall add a bunch of mulch to it, let that break down, and continue to build my soil over time without having to raise it again. Now eventually, I anticipate raising this one more time, probably another 6 inches, up to the point where, you know, when I become an old man, these should be at waist height so I don't have to bend down. It's the long-term goal. Anyways, to the top dressing soil. So these are two of the examples that I have today. You can start with something like Mel Bartholomew's square foot gardening mix, which is 1 part compost, 1 part vermiculite, and 1 part peat moss or coconut coir. What I find here in zone 3, especially in Alberta, it's sunny, it's hot, it's windy, low humidity. We have a hard time retaining moisture when we get in the heat of in the depth of summer, and you really don't want to be watering in the middle of the day. It's a waste of water, it can hurt your plants, because the water on top of, say, a leaf, if it's really sunny out, that'll act as a magnifying glass and really damage your plant. So I dropped the vermiculite component, and what I really focus in on is a couple of things. I want light, fluffy soil, good nutrients in my soil, but also it's not just a fast soil. I want some stuff that'll break down over time. So what I typically do is, now I know I'm going to get flack for this, but peat is a waste product here in Alberta. For most of our development, it is a waste product. That said, I'm all about renewable resources. Coconut coir here. To get the coconut coir actually here from the tropical places from which it's produced typically costs a lot more in carbon than to take this, which is peat, from a local source, right? It doesn't have to travel as far. It's going to be windrowed and destroyed anyways. Might as well put it to good use. And then a couple of different varieties of compost. So this is a potting compost mix that I have, and I'll probably add another bag to this here in the near future of a different variety. Now it's important to note, for the different varieties that you're looking for, what you want is different feedstocks. This is predominantly a plant, so a soft body plant compost. You'll also want, say, a wood chip compost, and you know, even a wood chip fish end product compost. So you get a bunch of different varieties. That'll help really balance out, in my opinion, the types of nutrients that are there and the long-term effects. So without further ado, let's gut some of these, get them spread out on top, and deal with the smell of the compost, because this will actually act as a biofilter. All the methane and interesting odors coming off of your compost will go through the top layer, which will have all the good beneficial microbes, and actually those smells, the methane and stuff, will be used as their food, but it won't smell on the outside. So let's get to it. So once again, every layer of the lasagna, you want to water that in. The third, and one of the most important parts for water conservation, is a good mulch. Now in the spring it can be hard to find leaves, dried leaves. They work awesome. But the one thing we have in plenty in the spring is dry grass. Now dry grass, not super ideal, but at the end of the day, you know what? It works. So what I've done is I've grabbed some mulch. Now this is dried, and you'll have to watch out that it doesn't mat, but I've left it in garbage bags with a little bit of water just to kind of start that decomposition process. So a good thick layer of mulch. Other things that you can add, coffee filters. The coffee itself has lots of added benefits. There's NP and K in there and all sorts of wonderful stuff. It's not, lots of it isn't available right away, but it does help initiate a culture for bacteria and other beneficial microbes, and as it breaks down, it'll continue to feed your plants. So good heavy mulching. Then again, water it one more time and just let it settle in. Keep it moist, keep it wet until you're ready to plant, and you'll have yourself some great garden soil. It does cost a little bit of money, but hey, it's well worth it in the end when you're saving money on some vegetables and you get the sheer enjoyment of gardening. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it very much. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and a subscribe. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join us on Google+ and Facebook. Those URLs can be found in the description below. Have a great day.